In 1990, a scholarly treatise published by an academic press became a surprise bestseller, and it kindled debates from ivory towers to television screens. The book is Sexual Persona, and its controversial author is Camille Paglia. She is professor of humanities at Philadelphia's University of the Arts. She has just published a collection of essays on topics ranging from Madonna to Anita Hill, and she's taken a swipe at her critics as well. This book is titled Sex, Art, and American Culture, and she's here to talk about her views on those subjects. Welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Let me start with you. You have a different view on Anita Hill. We would just take one small focus issue. You just heard Ruth Mandel say that Anita Hill is the hero for women in politics in 1992.
I just reject that totally. I think that Anita Hill is an intelligent woman who put her careerist interests above feminist principle and had no right to stand on feminist principle 10 years down the line. I think that Clarence Thomas may have been offensive. He may have been off base and used blue language and so on. But it was Anita Hill's responsibility to deal with that on the spot. I do not feel she was the victim of sexual harassment. I feel she was made uncomfortable by sexual language.
What would have made her a victim of sexual harassment?
If there had been a quid pro quo, if he had laid a hand on her and so on, I support sexual harassment guidelines. I think it's a wonderful innovation of contemporary feminism. But I think the hostile workplace category is really going overboard. I think that I'm radical on the subject of free speech. If someone offends you by speech, you must fight back by speech. We must make middle-class women able to use aggressive speech against their assailants. I do not believe there should be any policing of speech, per se. So I think that Clarence Thomas merely talking about pornography, to me, that was welcome. I am radically pro-pornography. I'm delighted he talked about pornography.
You're radically pro-pornography only in the concept that you think that everybody ought to have an opportunity to express whatever they want to express, and you don't want to censor it, no matter how others see it is harmful to women.
Well, you see, like my father, who taught at a religious college, would not have tolerated bawdy talk. He would have gotten up from a table and walked away from it. My father would have given up a job rather than to put up with it. So I don't think it's a feminist issue. I think Anita Hill simply, went along to get along, and her long-standing friendship with Clarence Thomas shows the fact that, in point of fact, she was not that upset by it. She was distressed at the time, but it didn't make any deep change in her life.
But even though she says differently.
Yeah, she's 10 years later. And what are we living in, a totalitarian regime where one has to defend oneself against conversations? I mean, 10 years later to reconstruct conversations one had. I mean, I am guilty 1,000 times over of the kind of sexual harassment Clarence Thomas was accused of.
Yeah. But let me just stay with that for a second, in a sense that, because I think it does define a lot of how you feel about feminism. The opportunity for her to say no and don't ever mention that in my presence, or to walk away. It was incumbent on her to do that, or not raise those charges.
That's right. Her responses were very ambiguous. She told the story in the Senate hearings of having been at a government cafeteria with Clarence Thomas, and he brought up pornography again, and the senators asked her, "What did you do?" She said, "I tried to change the subject." And I thought, this is peculiarly passive. This is not appropriate to feminism.
I know part of your argument too is about women as victims, which you don't like to think of.
I hate victim-centered.
You hate that idea.
I hate victim-centered ideology.
Yeah, but a lot of women also will say, that it's such a part of the culture that women are traumatized, and therefore they should not be expected to have the strength to resist, or be, that it has such a profound impact on them that it does stay with them, even though, in the same way it has to do with abused women, they can't step forward and defend themselves.
I hate this soap opera of victimization. I call my feminism street-wise or street-smart feminism. I admire, for example, someone like Lisa Sliwa, right, who is very upfront like me. She's a middle-class girl who identifies with the street.
Guardian angels and all that.
Correct. I believe in streets, the kind of street-smart attitude of the drag queens. The drag queens, to me, are great feminist models because they're out there dressed, they're ready to fight by word and by deed for themselves. I think that there's a kind of white middle-class sentimentality and self-pity in a lot of current feminism. My feminism predates the current feminist establishment. I mean, my record as a feminist goes all the way back to the 1950s. There's not a single feminist who can claim my credentials. It goes all the way back to when I was posing in transsexual costumes and, as a small child in the 1950s. So my feminism...
You were posing in transsexual costumes?
Yes, I was 5, 6, 7, 8. I was making these radical gestures of nonconformism in the middle of the Doris Day 1950s. And I'm sorry, Gloria Steinem is a Jenny come lately, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, what I'm saying is that my feminism feminism comes from the great period of the 20s and 30s. My heroines were Katharine Hepburn and Amelia Earhart. That is, I stress self-reliance, independence, personal responsibility, and not blaming other people for your problems.
Yeah, but also a lot of the feminists that you respect, or that you have battled with, would also cite Katharine Hepburn and Amelia Earhart. Would they not?
There's an awful lot of hand-holding, sort of coddling, whining things that have been going on in the last 20 years. I'm really out of sync with current feminism, and you see, feminists don't even recognize their own history, because I am a product of the great feminist movement of the early part of the century.
And what's the argument and the conflict between you and, say, a Naomi Wolf, and you and a Susan Faludi, who wrote a very popular book, Backlash, that was very successful last year?
That's a very poor book. I mean, if you want to see the bankruptcy of education in the Ivy League, look at this. Susan Faludi, Harvard class of '81. Naomi Wolf, Yale class of '84. If you want to see the tragedy that's going on right now, these two intelligent women, their minds have been just trashed by the propaganda that's been force-fed them. I mean, I came back from England early this summer, and I was astounded at the intellectual sophistication of Cambridge women compared to someone like these people like Faludi and Wolf. It is very, very sad. Both those books that those women wrote are shoddy. It is
one was The Beauty Trap, and the other was Backlash.
It is unworthy of feminism to promote this 10th-rate stuff. We just have to ask for higher standards. My great heroines are the great women professors at Vassar, at Smith, at Bryn Mawr of the late 19th century, women who held themselves to the highest standards. This male bashing that's been going on in the last 20 years has to stop. Amelia Earhart did not ask for special standards for women. She set herself the standards of men, as did Katharine Hepburn. I have also held myself to the highest standards of the history of mankind. I have tried to study the best that has been written, the best that has been thought, the greatest works of art. And now we have a kind of recipe for second-rateness in the last 20 years. I'm very, very unhappy with the education being given our best young women.
You are also doing battle with people who are on the forefront of the political correctness. What's the conflict there?
I hate ideology in any form. I hate dogma. I rebelled against the Catholic Church of the 1950s because of its dogma. So I hate dogma of today if it's an establishment feminism or gay activism. I believe in free thought and free speech. I am completely 60s in my attitude toward life.
Yeah, but the Catholic Church was a seminal influence on you.
Yes, Madonna and I have been formed by the Italian Catholic Church, and I believe the residual paganism and sort of non-Christianity of the Italian Church. I think that it's a very powerful. Madonna and I, our two biggest influences on us were Italian Catholicism and gay men. Gay men have been enormously influential in forming my sensibility.
Why?
They have a sense of art, of beauty. They have a boldness, a freedom about their sexuality. I admire them so much. They've been my closest friends for 25 years. And the sort of tragedy of my sex life has been that I'm more like a gay man than I'm bisexual, than I'm like lesbians or straight women. I'm a kind of wandering sexual mutant. Okay, never fitting into any particular group.
You went from where to where to where in your own sexual preference, in your sexual?
Well, I began when I was very young. I was very aware I was in love with women in my early years, and then at puberty, the hormones kicked in, right, and suddenly I was attracted to men, right, as well as women. So I have a great respect for hormones, which is completely excluded from contemporary feminist thinking. Right? No one has thought about nature for 20 years in contemporary feminism. And I felt this hormonal attraction to these creatures that I could not stand. See, this is why I had.
Well, why did you hate them or could not stand them?
I am an Aries. I am a completely militant Amazon, independent woman. I will not cater to men. I have not lived with a man. I have not catered to any men in my life. I punish men constantly, day by day. If they step over the line and demean women, I am at them.
How do you punish them?
I have hit them over the head with umbrellas. I have kicked them. I have punched them. I mean, like a guy, PWIC at a Madonna concert, I punched him in the face. I was 40.
I know about that, right.
I said, that's ridiculous. I'm a woman with a purse.
There was a reason why he did that.
He needed to relieve himself. He was being brutish as usual.
But I thought it had something to do with the fact that you had written certain things about that act.
No. He was just relieving himself. No. It was coincidental that he peed on my seat.
This was not a Paglia scholar or something.
I felt it was a karmic thing that suddenly this person came out of nowhere and peed on my seat. I thought it was very odd. I mean, I don't know what it was. But at any rate, no. I'm this completely sort of unorthodox sexual creature.
So then men came on and you had this hormonal attraction.
Tremendously. But I don't get along with men at all. I don't fall in love with men, but I'm madly attracted to them.
Just stay with me, though. But you went from this sort of hormonal attraction and then were bisexual?
Yeah, well, and then I was an open lesbian for very early on. In college, in graduate school, in my first job, and so on. It led to a lot of career problems for myself, which is why I don't have much respect for Anita Hill, because I put my principles on the line and I paid the career price for it.
Because you were openly lesbian, you suffered sexual discrimination.
Oh, I suffered job discrimination everywhere. I was the only open lesbian at the Yale Graduate School.
So therefore, why aren't you more sensitive insensitive to those that have experienced the same kind of discrimination because they're simply women.
No, because I have been so bold in my own life, I can say, stop whining, get on with it. Okay, I think I'm an excellent role model for the next generation of women. Susan Faludi and Naomi Wolf are simply clones of Gloria Steinem. Look at her; she's like a mother hen with her chicks. What I represent is the new feminism of the 21st century, which is going to get over this male bashing thing, put men in their place, okay, but respect what men have done. Okay, respect men for what they are.
And you give men most credit for where civilization has come to so far.
Admit that what men have done. Admit the great art that men has. Admit the culture that has given women her modern freedom. Okay. Now the point is, the current feminism wants to make men like women. Okay. Gloria Steinem has said that masculinity is an illness. It's a disease. It has to be cured. Okay. I don't believe this. I believe masculinity is something beautiful. It's real. It's eternal. And gay men have made me see this. Okay. Gay men are preservers of the masculine principle. Gay men see the beauty.
Why are gay men more preservers of the masculine principle than heterosexual men?
Well, I mean, you can see, just to open any gay newspaper, and you can see these gorgeous images that have a history. These hunks going all the way back to Greek art. I mean, the whole art tradition is preserved in gay male culture. And you see, actually, heterosexual men are closer to women because they're in essence mating with the shadow of their mothers. The shadow of their mothers is falling over their wives. But gay men are making the most complete break from their mothers. So to me, gay men are ultimately more masculine than straight men. I mean, it is one of my peculiar opinions, I have to admit.
Where are you now in your sexual preference?
I'm bisexual, but I am a total nun. Okay, no one, maybe Amanda.
Celibate?
Well, a lot of the time, because I mean, I hate banality. I cannot stand the banality of American personality. This is my problem. So, I'm at home with my videos with Lana Turner and so on.
With your videos?
Yes, I'm a total creature of popular culture. I live in the world of television and movies.
And that makes you very interesting. In fact, that's what this book is a lot about. Camille Paglia, Sex, Art, and American Culture. And we'll talk about some of the ideas here and also talk about some of the other things. You now know why she creates so much controversy wherever she goes. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'd put you two together. I know you do it. She wouldn't do it, would she?
Oh, she thinks I'm too weak.
She said I've known you.
That's right. There's a picture of us 1973 together. And her son attacked me at Vanity Fair when she said that. Oh, she is such a hypocrite. What a liar. I'm shaking her up. She's never had a challenge yet. You see, this is new for her, for Miss Susie.
We've been trying to get you here for a long time. Are you aware of that? Yeah.
Well, because I live in Philadelphia, it's hard.
And you know what? The impression was I kept saying, let's get Camille Paglia. And they said, well, she'll only come on with this person. She doesn't want to come on. I said, screw it. Get her on here.
Yeah.
Put that invitation.
It would be mega. It would be mega. I mean, if you could pull that up, but it would have to be a whole.
Did you say you're looking for sexy lesbians and you can't find any?
Well, yeah, I don't find any sexy lesbians. Where are they? See, everyone always tells me they're over here, they're over there. Where are they? When I go there, they're not there. I mean, it's making me so sick. See, I believe sophisticated women should be bisexual, or I should say that on the air.
Yeah, sophisticated women should be bisexual.
Yes, I think it's lesbianism now. I think that lesbianism is a dead end. I really do. It's a dead end for women.
Because you never meet any lesbians that you find attractive at all.
We should talk about this on air. This will infuriate everyone.
All right. Okay. Well. I have no fears. You know.
Right. I am a gender blender. It's not a question of wanting to be. Madonna and I are parallel phenomena. In Italian-American women, very rare that you have this. Geraldine Ferraro is a rare example of Italian-American women who've done anything. Madonna and I are absolutely, it's strange, it's parallel.
I got so much, God, we could do. You got to come back here. How long are you going to be in town?
Well, just till tomorrow.
Then you're going back.
But I'll be back again.
All right, well, call me, Will. All right. Oh, sure. Let me just stay with a couple of things in terms of some of these mild opinions you have. you and Madonna, you believe you and Madonna have the same idea and that you both are sort of gender blenders, meaning what?
Well, Madonna and I it's very strange. We're sort of these parallel phenomena. We're like these Italian-American Amazon dominatrixes who rose up at the same time.
Amazon dominatrix?
Yes. In terms of sexual personae, we're the same type. We rose out of nowhere. Italian-American women have done very little. Geraldine Ferraro is a rare example. And it's so strange.
Well, she has done a lot. I mean, she had a distinguished record in the Congress.
No, I mean, that's another example.
Right.
But there are very few other examples. Jewish women have done a lot, but not Italian-American women. And Madonna and I have very similar backgrounds, strong Italian Catholic.
Do you know her? Have you talked to her? Have you had any relationship with her?
People keep on trying to get us together, but it will happen. Fate will it. All right. No, but she and I have been heavily influenced by Italian Catholicism and gay men. I mean, we both love gay men and drag queens and so on. And we have a kind of drag queen view of femaleness. I learned how to be a woman from drag queens. All right. I rejected my sex role when I was young, and I learned through gay men what it is to be a woman.
You take on everybody, Camille. I mean, for example, you who show some disrespect for sexual differences by saying you don't find any lesbians that you like, and so therefore you think all women should be bisexual.
This is what I concluded. I tried desperately to be a lesbian for years, and lesbians hate me. I can't figure it out. I always end up talking to gay men in bars and so on. Finally, I concluded that the reason lesbians don't like me is I'm so man-like. My intensity of energy is male. So now, here it is, 25 years down the line, I'm saying all sophisticated women should be bisexual. Lesbianism, I feel,
what about
is a dead end.
heterosexual?
Heterosexual? I feel that women are naturally bisexual. I think it's harder for men, all right? And I think that all women should exercise their innate talent for bisexuality. I'm for universal bisexuality for women.
You believe you are the leading female intellectual of our time.
No question. I've succeeded Susan Sontag.
Well, have you succeeded her? Susan Sontag's got another book out. Susan
Sontag it's a novel. It's a very poor novel, too. A dull novel.
And she drives you crazy.
Well,
she drives you.
Yes.
She refuses to acknowledge your existence. Well, says she doesn't even know you.
Even though there's a picture of us in 1973, and her son attacks me in Vanity Fair. Well, you see, she belongs to a generation that's gone. For 20 years, her reputation has been way in excess of her actual achievement. She was wonderful in the late 60s, but I'm afraid she's being propped up by a very corrupt New York literary establishment that I am bent on bringing down.
How is she Okay, first, how is she being propped up?
Well, look at that New York Times Sunday magazine article. I was absolutely servile toward her.
I bet it drove you crazy.
Utterly uncritical.
It drove you crazy
to see me from
there. Drove you crazy. There she is in a magnificent photo, cover of New York Times magazine.
She looks pretty ragged. Come on. Come on. All right?
You know what they say about you, that you are too irate, that you are too much of an individual, and you can never be a consensus builder.
I'm not a consensus builder. I'm a pioneer. I break through. I'm the person, I'm an Aries like Betty Davis. We are the pioneers who break through. Then we have the diplomats sitting down afterwards in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles to make the treaties. All right? Yeah. But I'm someone I'm a warrior. I'm a woman warrior. And I just go, I'm completely fearless. I don't care about status. I don't care about position or money. And because of that...
You don't care about the enemies you make?
No, I'm a combatant. I'm one of the most aggressive women currently alive. Yeah. I love the combat.
Yeah. And are you having any impact?
Certainly.
Are we all simply attracted to you because you are controversial, because you are the way you are, in that you say whatever's on your mind, and that makes you great copy? But is anybody saying, she's right, let's march behind her standard, and let's listen and observe and hear and be influenced by what she is writing?
Well, it's obvious. My book was a bestseller.
Well, this one was. We don't know about this one
yet. Yes, this is brand new.
Right.
No, but I think it's pretty clear that the culture changed suddenly in 1990. That I couldn't get published in the 70s and 80s. I got nowhere. My sexual persona was rejected by 7 major New York houses, which shows you something.
Finally published by Yale Press?
And Yale Press had to be published in New Haven. Right. But suddenly in 1990, the culture changed. It was ready to listen to me. I haven't changed. The culture changed. In the 90s, people are looking within. They're looking, I think, for spiritual things again. The long view of history that I offer, the long view of art, the respect for art that I have, the respect for greatness. I think that it's striking a chord with people.
Are you, as in the way that the term is traditionally defined, a neoconservative?
Certainly not. There's an article in Playboy by me right now beginning, I'm a pornographer. I mean, please. I'm pro-prostitution, pro-legalization of drugs, pro-homosexuality, pro-drag queens. Mm-hmm. I mean, give me a break.
But you share the views that neoconservatives have with respect to political correctness.
No, the one thing we do share would be a respect for the great history of
Western civilization.
Of the accumulated intellectual and artistic tradition of the world. I actually have a multicultural perspective, but I believe in greatness. Right.
Who has influenced you most? What writers? What thinkers? What academics?
Freud.
What intellectuals?
Freud has influenced me. There's a great number of them, but Harold Bloom was my mentor at the Yale Graduate School. But Simone de Beauvoir did. All the great writers and
Why her?
Nietzsche. Simone de Beauvoir was the greatest female mind of the 20th century, as far as I'm concerned. And that book, The Second Sex, which is now over 40 years old, is too much neglected in contemporary women's studies. None of our contemporary women's studies people have come up to her ankle bones. I've written. Right? This was a very great woman. She did the work. She set herself the highest standards, which happened to be male standards.
Go ahead. I'll come out. I read one review of this. I think it was in the New York Times. You see, the review was on Monday or Tuesday of this week. And basically, what they did is they looked at some of the things that you said here in this book, and they said some of the things you said, I can't remember what, but called into judgment because some of the opinion was so off. For example, they said that you look to see a rebirth of the 60s, and because of certain things that you saw with respect to music, influences that you like, and you're a big rock fan, right?
I'm an enormous rock fan.
And you think the 60s style, or 60s mindset is coming back.
But no,
and the evidence was somebody appearing on Arsenio Hall's show.
The reviewer,
and people said
the reviewer has a tin ear and missed the irony and the humor.
Help us out.
No, but what I'm saying is that I am a product of the 60s, and what I'm saying is that we need a reassessment of the 60s. I feel that we must bring back the inspiring principles of the 60s, but tempered by the lessons of political realism of the 70s and 80s. My entire generation came to rack and ruin. We all, in some way, hit the wall, whether it was through drugs or sex, through the sexual diseases, or in my case, through challenges to authority. We all wiped out. I mean, I have friends who didn't survive this. And so now, it was like the tragedy of my generation. That is the problem with political correctness today. That is, the most creative and innovative members of the 60s did not go on to graduate school, and they blew their brains out on drugs. That is the lesson. What we have now...
So they're not teaching in major universities?
They're nowhere. And the people at the top pretending to be leftists are phonies. They're phonies and careerists and opportunists. And I know them, many of them. I was at graduate school with them, a time when I was very outspoken.
How would you define yourself then? If I mean, you said those people who are leftists, how would you define it? Libertarian in part?
I'm a libertarian. That is, I believe that I oppose intrusions of the state into anything involving the private realm. So, therefore, I'm pro-choice. I am, I would defend the right to sodomy, to taking drugs, to anything involving one's own body. I'm a radical libertarian.
No cases in the taking of drugs or any of these other activities that you would think that there ought to be government action and law to restrict those things on behalf of the community at large?
No, I feel that drugs took a terrible toll on my generation. So I personally would,
they continue to take a terrible toll on a generation here in the city, and you would do nothing to see those drugs and the impact of the drugs by government to stop them?
The state has no right to intrude on personal liberties. I feel that anyone has the right to alter their mind through the ingestion of any drug.
No matter what it does to them.
I think it's a tragedy for this culture that we're wasting so much money on policing the crime that results from people desperately needing the drug. I think that we should legalize the drugs and then treat it as we treat liquor, licensing it and so on.
I got to go, but let me one last question. Where do you think feminism is going?
Well, I think feminism is going through an enormous convolution right now. It's breaking apart into various segments. And I think we're going to find a new and re-strengthened feminism of the 21st century. I think it's going to emerge better through this debate that's going on. I'm forcing the debate. Gloria Steinem compares me to a Nazi. Okay, this is the level of suppression of free thought that's been going on in feminism for the last 20 years. But these establishment feminists in New York are getting a big surprise. Okay, with my rise, I'm not going away. They think I'm going to go away. But what I represent is an insurgent protest movement within feminism, pro-sex movement.
And you want to accomplish what?
The total destruction of the Gloria Steinem wing of feminism.
Camille Paglia, Sex, Art, and American Culture is her new book. It's kind of a volume 2 to Sexual Persona?
No, it's just 1.5.
All right.
Yeah.
There's another coming?
Oh, yes.
We'll return in a moment with Michael Kovnett, winner of the Democratic commercial contest, and he brought that commercial with him. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.